In a move that sent political shockwaves across the foreign policy world, President Donald Trump announced in a White House ceremony that the U.S. government will finally abide by the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995 by moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and officially recognizing the Israeli government's claim to the historic city as its capital, fulfilling a major campaign promise long sought by both the religious right as well as the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party. The announcement sparked an immediate wave of condemnations from many world leaders, ranging from majority Muslim nations, Western Europe, and even Pope Francis himself. But what does this decision really mean for the people of Israel and Palestine, and how will it affect the future of the Middle East? To answer these questions and more, we're joined first today by Max Blumenthal, senior writer at Alternet. Welcome, Max.
Good to be with you guys.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Max, on this unprecedented, amazing day that we're seeing. Now, let's say, I won't get down to nuts and bolts and just ask you, President Trump's decisions and pronouncements, a lot of time that get the most media coverage, like we saw today, wall to wall, often end up not being that impactful or unprecedented. Now, I want you to weigh in. Does this particular move stand out to you in its significance? Will this have impact? Will this be unprecedented? Will this actually kind of live up to a lot of that hype that they're giving it?
I mean, this is going to have massive impact on the ground throughout the region. Trump has poured fuel on the simmering flames. And, what he has done, first of all, we have to recognize, is really the culmination of decades of bipartisan pandering to the pro-Israel lobby and Israeli meddling to subvert American foreign policy. You can go back to 1992 to when Bill Clinton on the campaign trail attacked George H.W. Bush for refusing to declare Israel to declare Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Then in 1995, both chambers of Congress passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, demanding the embassy be relocated from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and Bill Clinton refuses to sign it because he recognizes the kind of impact it would have on the ground. Barack Obama in 2008 declares at AIPAC, in an act of just shameless pandering, that Jerusalem was the undivided capital of Israel. And so what Trump has done is use this bipartisan pandering as precedent for an actual decision, which will have serious ramifications, the first of which is to discount and finally discredit the United States as a broker in the Middle East peace process. The second ramification is to take the corpse of the dead peace process, the moribund peace process, and put it in the incinerator once and for all, which means the consolidation of a recognition that Israel is operating a singular, unitary apartheid regime from the river to the sea, and this will have implications across the globe.
Well, one of the things is, we were just talking about Saudi Arabia, and part of the thoughts around this are that some sort of deal might have been made between Jared Kushner and the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia about this before it's happening. And I don't think any of them will care two bits about what actually happens to people on the ground. So I'm wondering, since you have been on the ground, you spend time there, what are the immediate effects to the people?
Well, first of all, you're right that there's a very special relationship between Jared bin Salman and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed Kushner. They're basically interchangeable figures, along with Benjamin Netanyahu. You have this axis from Trump to Riyadh to Jerusalem, and you've seen the Israelis and Saudis moving closer than ever before. So what they're trying to do with this move is to basically eliminate the Palestinian national movement, just push the Palestinian people aside so they can join together on what really unites them, which is this this belligerent, bellicose campaign against Iran, this obsession with Iran. But first they have to take care of the Palestinians. On the ground, you have to recognize there are 300,000 Palestinians in East Jerusalem, 36% of the population. They only receive 15% of the services. There are entire neighborhoods in Jerusalem that receive no services, while its residents pay taxes to the Jerusalem municipality. So this is a consolidation of apartheid, but more disturbingly, what it will do is send the message to Jewish Israelis and Jewish settlers that East Jerusalem is theirs, Palestinians do not belong there, and it will intensify the kind of vigilante violence we've seen that can really heat things up on the ground.
I want to bring in Dov Waxman, director of Northeastern University's Middle East Center. Dov, I want to ask you, with the move of Trump, recognizing Jerusalem today as the capital of Israel, in regards to Prime Minister Netanyahu, he embraced this announcement as a victory for Israel, but is the rest of Israel's political world united on this? Will this be seen as a win that solidifies Netanyahu's political position at home, or could it ultimately hurt him?
Well, certainly there is a broad domestic consensus in Israel in favor of recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That is something that really across the board and across all the major political parties in Israel, with the exception of the Joint Arab List, there's support for. But I don't think this is really going to do a whole lot to improve Netanyahu's domestic situation. He's facing multiple indictments concerning corruption allegations. His popularity has been waning for some time among Israelis, and so he might get a very temporary domestic political boost from this. But I think it's ultimately not going to really save his own political fortunes in the long run.
Interesting. Max, let me ask you this. Even as a lot of, as we've seen a ton of political and religious leaders around the world condemning the decision, we've also seen a lot of people in the Israeli media are reporting that several world governments privately are saying that they will move their embassies as well, that they will go along with this. Well, do you see this as the first domino to drop? Or do you think that's what's going to happen, that suddenly they're going to move all these embassies? And why is that so dangerous? Like, what do you gain from doing this?
Well, first of all, we have to look at the domestic base that Trump is appealing to here. Sheldon Adelson, one of his largest donors, has demanded a move of the embassy. Steve Bannon was at a Judge Roy Moore rally in Alabama where he said Jerusalem is the capital, and Christian Zionist end-timers in the crowd who really represent Trump's hardcore base were, cheering, just getting really excited about that announcement. So this is what it's about, even though, and I think Dov pointed this out on Twitter, 53% of Americans actually oppose this move. We hear verbal condemnations from the EU, verbal condemnations from Jordan, pathetic, mealy-mouthed statements from Saudi Arabia, which could care less about the Palestinians. And, whether or not they move their embassy to Jerusalem, what they are failing to do is impose any costs on Israel, any consequences for a move like this, which does away with the peace process that these governments have claimed to care about for so long. It would require actually sanctioning Israel, imposing costs on people who do business and companies that do business with the settlements, refusing to resupply Israel militarily. And none of these governments will do it, so they're just paying lip service. And in that sense, it's they're sort of complying.
Dov, let me ask you, what do you feel is going to be, coming off of what Max just said, what do you feel is going to be the ultimate impact in your research and your studies you've done in the Middle East and in Israel? What do you feel is going to be the ultimate impact on this long term?
Well, I think it's another blow to the United States' credibility as a quote-unquote honest broker in the peace process. I think for some time people have been raising questions about whether the United States was really an effective mediator in the peace process. And of course, raising questions about whether there is even worthwhile trying to resurrect this peace process. So I think this will only deepen Palestinian skepticism about the intentions of the Trump administration. Trump's peace initiative, Kushner's peace initiative, is likely to be dead on arrival if Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas follows through with what he's talking about, which is essentially, which is something that many Palestinians would want, which is really not partaking in this process any longer, not partaking in what most Palestinians have come to believe is really a waste of time and in many ways something that undermines Palestinian interests. So I think the peace process was already, for all intents and purposes, dead. But what Trump's announcement may have done was well and truly buried it.
Let me ask, we got about 2 minutes left. I'll get a minute from each of you if I can, but let me ask you this, we've seen now all the accusations about, collusion with Russia and all of the things going on there between the Trump, administration here. But when you look at the movements that have made recently and what came light of the Michael Flynn accusations and all that and what he pled to, it looks like there's more collusion between like Saudi Arabia and Israel with the Trump campaign, as you mentioned earlier, Max, than with Russia. Dov, I'll ask you, after today's announcement, do you think that, and the news about Flynn's lobbying is, you mentioned that the peace movement's probably not going to work out, but do you feel there's more of a collusion on that side of things than with Russia?
I certainly suspect that behind the scenes, the Saudis have been involved in this. I would be very, very surprised if the Saudis weren't informed beforehand. I think the Saudi public reaction today is really just paying lip service. And there have been reports that after meeting with Kushner, the Saudis basically called Abbas to Riyadh and essentially told him what the terms of the Trump administration's peace initiative would be, and that Abbas had no choice but to accept those terms, or they'd find another Palestinian leader who would do so. So I think there is a lot of suspicion here that this may be the prelude to some sort of US-Saudi plan, peace plan, and a peace plan which may involve essentially trying to force the Palestinians to give up any claim to East Jerusalem. I think that would be completely unacceptable to the Palestinians and to much of the international community. But given the maverick behavior, if you like, of the Saudi crown prince and his somewhat reckless foreign policy in the Middle East, this would be in keeping with that.
Gotcha. Max, your opinion?
Yeah, I think that Israel and Saudi Arabia have defined Trump's policy towards the Middle East, and these policies have had implications across the globe. So, of course, these are the sources of real influence within the Trump administration, but more broadly throughout Washington. And we've seen Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, the chief Democrat in Congress, say that he actually urged Donald Trump to make this announcement. Charles Schumer is, heavily funded by the pro-Israel lobby. So this problem goes well beyond Donald Trump. And beyond that, it really highlights the importance of civil society initiatives like the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which really, at this point, is the only means to exert pressure on Israel to roll back its 70-year campaign of apartheid against Palestinians. The peace process is over. The United States as a broker is finished, and we're now looking at a new chapter in the Middle East.
Oof. Well, on that note, Max, I got to say thank you very much. Max Blumenthal, senior writer at Alternet. Thank you for coming by. Professor Dov Waxman, director of Northeastern University's Middle East Center. Thank you so much for coming on today, giving us your thoughts on this highly, highly interesting subject. All right, everybody, that is our show for you today. Remember, everyone, in this world, we are not told we are loved enough, so I tell you all, I love you. I am Tyrell Ventura.
And Tabitha Wallace.
Keep on watching those Hawks and have a great day and night, everybody.